Would you like?
I'd still like the floor.
You got it.
Thank you. I think that there was a lot of assumption around industrial zone, because that's where we had ended up with the medicinal marijuana and the cultivation facilities, because those are industrial uses. It makes perfect sense to cite those in industrial. I've just been thinking about it, reading about it, talking with more people, and it's not necessarily, for me, a question of a zone. It's more a location. Because there are some locations, I don't want it anywhere in the city. I mean, honestly, I'm not a fan of marijuana. I think it's a bad idea. However, given that we have to deal with it, I think it's about location. I keep thinking of things in terms of location. There are some locations that would be amenable in terms of just how they're sited, what the parking is, what the access is, that abutters may or may not, hopefully, object to a location, to a retail operation like that. There are going to be other locations for a variety of reasons, regardless of what zone they're in, whether they're in commercial or industrial, that are not such great locations because of their access, because of their lack of parking, because abutters are unhappy and don't want that kind of facility near them. So, I mean, I certainly understand where the industrial zone designation has come from. I've just been thinking more about it and thinking, there are some locations, not necessarily, I'm thinking about it more in terms of a specific location for a retail operation, not necessarily restricting it to a particular zone, for example, industrial. That's all. So I would actually propose amending the ordinance to include special permit by the city council, regardless of where somebody wanted to site it. Any location would have to come to us for a special permit in order for a retail adult use marijuana facility to open up.
All set, Counselor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors like to comment? Counselor Frida?
First of all, I do appreciate what Councilor Bedanza and Kristen Kelly have done. I understand that. I get zoning. I've been in the business for 40 years. I understand zoning. My whole point, though, is we got to the zoning too fast. And what does Maury Haley's decision today do for us? Can we look at a moratorium? Can we slow it down, talk to the people in the community, do some surveying, do what some of these other communities have done for that reason? And if that's how it ends up and people support it, then go back to supporting this ordinance. I understand that. We also said that we'd be leaving ourselves wide open. Somebody can walk in the mayor's office tomorrow and ask for a host agreement. The mayor's got to grant the host agreement to put it in the city. Without him granting it, we won't have it. So that there is some ability to slow it down, even though we don't have the ordinance on the record. That's my only issue. I mean, I have my opinion. I've expressed it all along. This is no surprise to anybody, because I felt like we were moving too fast. You know, I've worked on you know, the MMA co-authoring a paper on gateway drugs, and I agree to the council to my right. And these are something we really need to look at. So I guess my basic question, can we give this further time? Can we look at what the ramifications are with the Attorney General's decision today? If it's not something that we can do in this community, then we'll look at the ordinance again. If it's something we can do, then maybe we can look at a moratorium to do some of these other things and make sure this is the right thing for the city. Those are my points.
I'll take that consideration back to Legal Affairs Committee at the end of the debate, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Pauline Cormier, you haven't weighed in yet. Would you like to weigh in?
I understand what Councilor Frida is saying, and as an attorney, I agree. You know, I'm not going to support marijuana. I think it's a bad idea. I think I have clients day in and day out who are in trouble. They're on probation, and they can't kick the marijuana. I get that. But what you're talking about is going back out to our constituents and asking them what they think, if their position has changed. We have no indication that their position has changed. Is it close? Is it 51 to 49? Yes. I have no indication that, from anybody, that that's gonna change. If we were to re-vote again, do I think the same 51% would support it and the same 49 would be against it? Absolutely. I don't see that any particular group has made a big move from one side to the other. And again, as to what Councilor Bedanza has said and Councilor Dombrowski has said, this is an issue, what we're voting on tonight is about getting this regulation, getting it on the books, getting that part of it done. I think we have to do that, and I understand. I just don't agree that going out and asking our constituents, hey, here's your position on where marijuana, has it changed? I think you're gonna get the same numbers that we got, and in my ward, everybody, the numbers all came out, all three zones in my ward said that they were for it. I don't see any of those people changing.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gail Feckley?
So as with anything controversial, you're going to have a lot of different viewpoints, and everybody here tonight has said what they felt. I think it's very heartfelt too. This has been a very difficult road for all of us. I mean, just to put it out on the record, I did not vote for the referendum. I don't appreciate marijuana in my community. I had issues with marijuana in my family, and it was very, very difficult. And I hope that this doesn't make more families become affected by this. What I would like to do, though, is I would, through the chair, like to ask the Ward 4 councillor a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
Okay. Councilor Bedanza, if we did amend the ordinance for special permit without any particular zone, and then an applicant came to us and say, for example, as you indicated, you wouldn't want somebody to be down at the mall, and neither would I, could we deny that?
No.
Okay. So if they...
In my opinion, if someone came in and wanted to locate a marijuana business at the Mall of Whitney Field, and they had a lease for a storefront down there, I don't think we could sit here and vote against that special permit. I mean, how would we do that? I mean, the special permit criteria, it's not a ban. It's a, as the planning board always says, they're a board of permitted uses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a conditions, does it meet the criteria? What they're doing down there now is they're selling products. Just because it's marijuana, it's not gonna make a whole lot of difference. So it's a product, they need a place that's appropriate with parking and traffic and all of those things. They'll meet the criteria. That's not gonna stop anybody. Special permit is not a burden. It's not a hurdle that can't be gotten over. So you're not gonna be able to use a special permit process to stop someone from locating in a commercial zone because the abutters or us or anybody else doesn't like that particular place.
Okay. So the answer is absolutely no.
Unless it just happened to be a piece of land that was a horrible piece of land for traffic or parking or all the rest, you'd have to have some very strong criteria to say no to that special permit application.
We have essential criteria.
Mm-hmm.
We have to follow that.
Right.
And if it meets it, it meets it with no bias.
Okay. Well, this is for the public to know, too.
Absolutely.
You
You have another question?
Yeah, we know that. So my second question is, would abutters be able to keep a marijuana facility from coming into their neighborhood?
No, they'd
Okay.
be able to come down here and voice their concerns. And it's a political process, so they could contact their ward councilor, their councilors at large.
Mm-hmm.
But in essence, they're just a piece of the puzzle. So if, there's a not in my backyard folks sometimes come out, and that's their right, and hey, look, I understand that totally. But just because someone doesn't like marijuana, that isn't gonna be a valid reason to deny somebody a special permit.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good questions, thank you. I'm gonna yield the floor one more time for a round on anything that needs to be clarified or has not been said yet. Okay, just remember, we're
Yeah.
sharing information at this
Yeah.
point. Council Bonanza, you have the floor first.
I just want to say something I want to clarify a point that I think is important. Moratorium has been discussed. The Attorney General's decision today to expand the moratorium past December 31 to June 30 of 2019 has been mentioned. It's important to note that a moratorium is a zoning ordinance. So if we started tomorrow with a moratorium process, it would take months in order to get the moratorium passed. And that's my fear. When I sat down with Kristen, we went through the calendar, you know, with all of the little things that we had to do to get to this point with this particular ordinance. And it's been a good 3.5 or 4 months since we started this process. A moratorium could take, maybe it wouldn't take quite that long, but it could take a while. And in the process, if somebody walks through that, the mayor can't hold someone off forever. If he grants that host agreement and they get a license from CCC, they could be here and then we have nothing to protect us. That's my concern. Again, my admonition is pass this tonight. If you want to tinker with an overlay district, which some communities have done, if you want to tinker with adding other potential, I mean, the best way to address areas where you don't want it commercially, but you might want it commercially, is an overlay district, or address map issues with respect to where you want it to go. We can do that, but it would be better to have this in place while we're doing that than nothing. Because if you don't have this in place, you are wide open. And that's, if you're concerned, I mean, I haven't heard anybody down here say tonight that they were really cheerleading for recreational marijuana, not one person. And if that's really the way you feel, then with all due respect, I think you ought to buy onto this ordinance and get it in place to keep recreational marijuana from coming to anywhere, any community or any neighborhood in your community. And if we want to tinker with the zone later on, or the map later on, we can do it. But at least we have something to protect us in the meantime.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Dabrowski, you were next. Go ahead.
I just, the special permit is not it's not a prohibition, but it can be used to handle unsafe circumstances. You know, if you've got heavy tractor trailer truck and not safe vehicular access to a particular site, you know, it can be used, you know, to deny those particular situations. But, you know, frankly, it's not going away. It's just not. It's not going away. You can delay it, I guess, but it's not going away. And the reason I support it in an industrial zone is, frankly, it's probably the most restrictive, and it's probably the only area where you're less likely to have children and youngsters going. They're going to go to residential, they're going to go to rural, they're going to go to commercial. So really, the way this ordinance is formatted, it makes it restrictive, and it puts the onus on the applicant to satisfy the special permit requirements. So I don't see a lot of holes in this ordinance, and if there are holes, again, it's a living document, and we'll improve them like we have with the zoning ordinance and other ordinances. So I just think that we need to act responsibly with this. So.
All set. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Frida was next.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
I disagree with the months for moratorium. It's my understanding that if you vote for a moratorium, it takes effect immediately as you're going through the process. I believe that was shared by Brian Riley at one point. I'm not positive, I'd have to look it up, but I think once you start with a moratorium, you're protected. There's nobody that can come in and try to usurp that. So, look, I get it, and I support the industrial zone. I support the ordinance. But I disagree with, I just read off 70 communities that voted 51-49. Now, when you're talking about putting it in your own community, people who voted for it in the Commonwealth, they're looking at it completely differently. They're at least questioning it. They want to have a discussion about it. They need to know a little more about it. Before it was, yep, it's on the ballot, we're voting for it. I think it's legal, and I have no problem with it being legal in Massachusetts. But now you say Leominster, certain areas of Leominster, you got people that are asking the question. As I said, if this came where people are still supportive, I'd be right in line to support this ordinance. I just don't feel like we did everything we could. That's my biggest issue.
All set, Counselor? Thank you. Any last comments? If not, the discussion on the floor is closed at this point. We're going to take this to a vote. Before we do, I just want to remind the council that this requires 6 votes in order for it to pass. I'm going to yield the floor back as a professional courtesy, as I stated to Councilor Frida, to Legal Affairs for a confirmation or reconsideration of your recommendation. Mr. Chairman, are you ready to report?
My recommendation remains. I'll ask you to poll the committee.
I yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Frida.
No, I'm opposed.
Third member, Councilor Bonanza.
I'm in favor.
In favor. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant petition 40-18. This will be a roll call vote. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to begin with Councilor Feckley.
Nay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Nay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Frida.
What did you say?
Yay.
Oh, nay.
I shall be recorded as yea. Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Ottinger.
Yay.
That's a yea, correct?
Yay.
Thank you. Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
By a vote of 6-3, petition 40-18 has been granted. Thank you, Councilor, for the debate and discussion. We now move on to the next page. 62-18 is the Chairman of Legal Affairs ready to report.
If we could take 6218 and 6318, well, if I could just inquire of the city clerk, did we get an opinion from?
We did.
You did.
Okay. I
Would you
didn't-
like her to read it for you?
Yeah,
Or
do you mind?
how about, you have that?
I have it right here.
Okay. Councilor Bonanza, do you have that
I have it.
recommendation?
Want me to
You're
read
the
it?
petitioner. Can you share with us real
I
quick?
can read it, yeah, sure.
Thank you.
It's an email from Brian Riley dated June 21, 2018. Lynn, you referred these 2 petitions to me for opinion. He's referring to 6218, 6318. In December, I sent the attached opinion regarding some prior petitions to post stop signs on private ways in the city. Petitions 62-18 and 6318 filed by Councilor Bonanza seek to post stop signs where Revolution Drive and Commonwealth Circle, both private ways, intersect with Exchange Street, a public way. I discussed my previous opinion with Councilor Bonanza and his reasons for filing the 2 petitions, and I agreed to revisit the issue. In my valid and consistent with Massachusetts regulations to place stop signs at the intersections designated in petitions 62-18 and 63-18, and at the intersections that similarly involve entry onto a street that is a public way and safety concerns merit the stop signs. I first note that my attached opinion from 12/27/17 accurately cites and analyzes relevant state statutes. However, upon further review, the procedure to require requests from an abutting landowner or landowners appear to be best understood to apply to situations where the traffic regulation, in parens, speed limit, traffic regulatory signs such as stop or yield, etc., is confined to the private way or ways themselves. For example, a speed limit on a strictly private way or a stop sign where 2 private ways meet would, generally speaking, require the consent procedure set forth in General Laws, Chapter 90, Section 18. As for the 2 petitions at issue, however, the stop signs would be placed at the end of the private ways where they meet Exchange Street, and it appears most likely the stop signs could and would be placed within the city's easement on the right-of-way at Exchange Street. I also note, looking at the street map, Exchange Street turns very sharply to the southwest less than 200 feet from the 2 intersections, such that traveling east on Exchange Street could come upon the 2 intersections suddenly and pose an accident risk to vehicles just turning out of Revolution Drive or Commonwealth Circle. In my opinion, erecting stop signs at these locations would be consistent with regulations in effect in Massachusetts. For example, the RMV's driver's manual listing the rules of road states that when entering a paved thoroughfare from a private road, a driveway, or unpaved road, you must stop. You must then give the right-of-way to pedestrians, bicyclists, or vehicles on the road you are entering. Stop signs at these two locations would be consistent with that directive. In addition, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, a national government publication published locally by the DOT, states in relevant part with regard to the following placement of stop signs, and he goes on to list the whole long provision that is basically consistent with the regulation I just read.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any objection to taking these in block?
Looks good.
Case, petition 6218, Mark C. Bedanza Esquire, amend section 13-77 of the Leominster Municipal Code by adding a stop sign for southwestbound traffic on Commonwealth Circle at the intersection of Exchange Street. Petition 6318, Mark C. Bedanza Esquire, amend section 13-77 of the Leominster Municipal Code by adding a stop sign for northeastbound traffic on Revolution Drive at the intersection of Exchange Street. My recommendation, given the city solicitor's opinion, would be to grant both 6218 and 6318. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor to Councilor Frida.
I agree.
Councilor Bonanza, petitioner.
agree.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
The unanimous recommendation is to grant petition 6218 and petition 6318.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard a favorable recommendation for 6218 and 6318 in block. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Frida.
I just think we need to keep that opinion handy, because there's gonna be a lot
We
of
certainly
people,
do. That's not
a
going
lot
anywhere.
of streets coming forward to do the same,
Yeah.
so we
That's
need
going to
to
be
be
a
prepared
pinup
for
in
it.
the vault. It's not going anywhere.
Oh,
It's a
I'm glad
great
he took
move.
I'm glad he took another look at it, because I really do think there's some significant safety concerns out there that need to be
Absolutely.
regulated.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Any other comments or questions? If not, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Odenger.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay,
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski, I'm sorry.
Yay, that's all right.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
I should record as yea by a vote of 9-0 in block. 62 and 6318 have been granted. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee. We now move on to 69-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, petition 6918, Noria Energy Corporation, amend the existing license to store 30,000 gallons of gasoline/diesel at 436 Lancaster Street. We had a public hearing earlier this evening. The engineer came down. Essentially, it's pretty straightforward. They're going to continue to maintain 30,000 gallons. They're going to have 2 tanks instead of 3 tanks, but it will be the same footprint. And the safety precautions in the newer tanks are much more advanced than the older tanks. My recommendation is to grant. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you. I yield the
Thank you.
floor to the clerk. Thank
That's
you.
what-
Third member.
I'm in support.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just impose on the permit itself or the license, if there were any conditions on the previous one, if they can apply to this one as well?
Yes, that's a good point. I meant to
Okay.
say that. We'd also ask that any conditions that ran with the prior license also run with this license.
Thank you very much. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant 69-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor David Cormier?
Well, I mean, I'd just like to point out that we're amending the existing license, so there isn't like a previous one and this one. We're amending the existing one. So I think that'd be automatic anyway,
Yeah.
you know, but
Actually, new one, correct.
I agree, it never hurts to sort of dot our i's and cross our t's just to make sure in case there were anything
Absolutely.
over there, so.
Good point. Thank
Okay.
you. Any other comments or questions? If not, again, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Frida.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay,
Councilor Odenger.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
I should record as yea by a vote of 9-0. The license has been granted. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We now move on to finance. Is the chairman of finance ready to give a financial report?
I am, Mr. President. With respect to the excess and deficiency of free cash summary for the fiscal year, it was certified at $9,732,293. With the, all of the appropriations, including the ones on the calendar for this evening. The appropriations would total $9,727,357, leaving a balance of $4,936, which will be more than likely, I guess, in free cash next year. With respect to the stabilization fund, we began the fiscal year with a balance in the account of $14,517,855. During the course of the fiscal year, we borrowed or appropriated from that account in the amount of $4,611,690. We also added to the account in that amount plus some additional amounts totaling $5,155,788, which leave the balance of the stabilization account currently at $15,061,952.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, Communication 67, are you ready to report?
I am. C-67, relative to the appropriation of $40,000 to the Library Department expense account, same to be transferred from the Library Department salary and wages account. Library has a surplus in the salary and wages account, largely due to some unfilled positions. The director is seeking to use that money in the coming fiscal year to enhance the branding of the library by updating a website that sorely needs it and creating some uniform signage, all to be done consistent with the city's new marketing efforts. We had a meeting the Finance Committee did last Thursday, and the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee is to grant C-67.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication 67. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, Communication 67 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. Order that the sum of $40,000 be appropriated to the Library Department expense account, same to be transferred from the Library Department salary and wages account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll now move on to Communication 68. Are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-68, relative to the appropriation of $50,000 to the Police Department overtime account, same to be transferred from the Police Department salary and wages account. This is something we've encountered a number of times over the fiscal year. As we all know, the Police Department is short-staffed, so there's a bulge in the salary and wages account, and more officers are being required to work overtime. According to the interim chief Goldman, as of June 7th, they were 98% expended in the overtime account. This is to address that. Again, the unanimous recommendation of Finance last Thursday was to grant C-68.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation to grant Communication 68. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. Order that the sum of $50,000 be appropriated to the Police Department overtime account, same to be transferred from the Police Department salary and wages account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order has been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Communication 69.
C-69, relative to the appropriation of $8,000 to the Police Department capital outlay expense account, same to be transferred from the excess and deficiency account. There's a letter sent down with this communication from Mr. Mitchell, our assessor, and this is a relationship to the acquisition of a site for the new police station. And this money is needed for asbestos surveys in connection with those purchase and sale contracts. It is the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to approve C-69.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read to grant Communication 69. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 69 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President. Order that the sum of $8,000 be appropriated to the Police Department capital outlay expense account, same to be transferred from the excess and deficiency account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. Again, any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Communication 70, are you ready to report?
I am, relative, C-70, relative to the appropriation of $90,000 to the Recreational Department Capital Outlay Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Excess and Deficiency Account. This money is being sought to upgrade the lights and size of the softball fields at Fournier Park so they can accommodate tournaments. There's a budget estimate set from a company called Musco, which talks about all of the equipment that's necessary in order to do this and the pricing associated with it. I can share a copy of this with anybody who's interested later, but it's pretty voluminous. But it's, like I said, for lighting and actually expand the size of the field. The fields are just about 10 feet too small to accommodate tournament play, so this would accommodate the tournament play. The lights needed upgrading anyway, so they're gonna do both at the same time. That's what this is about.
Thank you very much. And the recommendation?
Recommendation of the Finance Committee was to grant C-70.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation to grant Communication 70, are there any comments or questions? Council Shalfo Zephyr?
Yeah, through the chair to the finance chair. I would like a copy of that because I raised the question for more
Yes.
detail at the last meeting.
I'll get it for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by vote, opposed? Okay, 8-1. Council Feckley is in opposition to that on Communication 70. The petition is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $90,000 be appropriated to the Recreation Department Capital Outlay Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Excess and Deficiency Account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, this will be a yea, nay vote. All those in favor?
Yay.
Those opposed?
Nay.
9-0. Council Feckley, I didn't hear you,
I
I'm
said
sorry.
nay.
Nay, okay, thank you. We have an 8-1 vote on that, thank you. The order's been adopted. We'll begin with, we now move on to Communication 71. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-71, relative to the appropriation of $2,500 to the Emergency Management Agency Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Excess and Deficiency Account. This has a letter attached to it from Mr. Coggins, the Director of the Office of Emergency Management. Appropriation request, concerns about fencing were brought to my attention by a neighbor who is in a butter to the property of the City of Leominster Emergency Management Office. I inspected the seat of fencing separating the two properties, and the fence is in desperate need of repair due to age and rot. It is my opinion it needs to be replaced. I requested B&R Fencing to provide us a quote to replace 80 feet of cedar fencing with 80 feet of vinyl fencing, which is more cost-effective than replacing it with cedar. The cost of fencing and installation is $2,100, and to remove and dispose of the old fencing is an additional $400 for a total of $2,500. I am requesting an appropriation of $2,500 to complete this project, as we do not have the funds in our current budget. Sincerely, Charlie Coggins, Director. It is the unanimous recommendation of Finance to grant C-71.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard the recommendation to grant Communication 71. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 8-1, Communication 71 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $2,500 be appropriated to the Emergency Management Agency Expense Account, same to be transferred from the Excess Deficiency Account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 71 has been granted. Council Ottinger, if I can just go back to the granting of the communication, just to qualify your vote, was that a yea or a nay?
Yay.
It was a yea, okay.
Yes, sorry.
That's all right, we just had you, that's fine. Gotcha, 9-0 on that, ladies, all right? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on to Communications 72. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-72, relative to the appropriation of $21,300 to the Emergency Management Agency Salary and Wages Account, same to be transferred from the Collective Bargaining Expense Account. This is relative to the retirement of the Emergency Management Director, and the money is necessary to buyback his sick leave and unused vacation time. Sick leave buyback is 20% of his annual salary, $16,517.40, and 3 weeks of unused vacation time, $4,764.63. It is the unanimous recommendation of Finance to grant C-72.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant Communications 72. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 72 has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $21,300 be appropriated to the Emergency Management Agency Salary and Wages Account, same to be transferred from the Collective Bargaining Expense Account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order has been adopted on Communication 72. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Communication 73.
C-73, relative to the appropriation of $25,609 to the city clerk salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the excess and deficiency account. This regrettably has to do with the retirement of our city clerk. We wish her well, of course. And this is again for sick leave buyback and vacation time, and is the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-73.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, ordered that the sum of $25,609 be appropriated to the city clerk salary and wages account, same to be transferred from the excess and deficiency account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation read. Any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you. Communication 74, is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-74, relative to the appropriation of $10,000 to the Medicare expense account, same to be transferred from the collective bargaining expense account. We have a letter from David LaPlante to Mayor Mazzarella dated June 20. Dear Mayor Mazzarella, I have examined the federal Medicare expense account and have estimated that we will be short approximately $10,000 for fiscal year 18. Each year we estimate what wages for employees, city and school will be calculated, and calculate the required 1.45% matching federal Medicare payments due from the city. Any employee hired before 1987, any employee hired after 1987 is subject to this tax. The actual taxes due came in higher than our estimate by approximately $10,000, which is why I'm asking for the additional appropriation to cover the account for fiscal year 18. It is the unanimous recommendation of Finance to grant C-74.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, ordered that the sum of $10,000 be appropriated to the Medicare expense account, same to be transferred from the collective bargaining expense account. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation confirmed. Are there any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move on to Communication 75.
C-75, relative to the appropriation of $265,000 to the fiscal year 2019 school department expense account, same to be raised by fiscal year 2019 revenue. Council may remember from our budget hearings last week that there is about a $315,000 or so gap between what the mayor sent down in a statutory budget versus what the school department recommended. This will help close some of that gap. It is the unanimous recommendation of Finance to grant C-75.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the communication is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $265,000 be appropriated to the fiscal year 2019 school department expense account, same to be raised by fiscal year 2019 revenue. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard that recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 75 has been granted. Now move on to page 5. Before we begin, I'd like to convey a disclosure to the council. I submitted it on June 18th, 12:02 p.m. This is disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest as required by General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 23B and 3. I have a wife that's in, I believe, her 20th year of teaching in the Leominster school system, a daughter who is in her 10th as a guidance counselor, and a grandson working part-time this summer for the Recreation Department. So I'll be recusing myself from those portions of the budget that are involved with salary, wages. Okay? Anyone else? Councilor David Cormier?
Thank you very much. I also need to abstain from any and all line items in the fire department's budget pertaining to salary, wages, overtime, benefits. And I also need to, this year, abstain from I believe it's a $3,000 line item for the Disability Commission, because I am,
Right.
I am on the Disability Commission now, and I'm the treasurer of the Disability Commission, so I certainly cannot wear two hats, so I need to abstain from the Disabilities Commission's a line item in the budget as well.
That
Thank
will
you.
also be noted in the minutes of the meeting. Thank you. Anyone else? We're good? Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to begin with, on page 5, Communication 76, back to the Chairman of Finance. Are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, C-76 relative to the appropriation of $124,444,352 to the fiscal year 2019 general fund budget, same to be raised, offset by fiscal year 2019 revenue. We had this on we had budget hearings last week, as the council knows, and this was on the Finance Committee agenda as well as a separate item, but we could not vote on that before the final hearing was conducted this evening. I'll ask you, Mr. President, to poll my committee with respect to C-76.
And your position is?
My position is to grant.
I yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Grant.
The third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, qualification of your recommendation, please.
The recommendation of Finance is to unanimously grant C-76.
Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication 76, the recommendation. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor David Cormier?
Thank you very much. I just want to thank our chairman of finance for another year of serving in this role and working to get to where we are tonight. I certainly have been in the role before, and I know how much work it is, although this year seemed like it was probably a little easier than last year.
I'd agree with that.
That's good. But I just want to, explain my support for the budget. I like every budget, probably in the history of the city, it's not perfect. Some of the things I heard during the budget hearings are issues with capital improvement needs, which, voting for or against this budget is not going to, resolve anything. That's something that everybody needs to take note of. The department heads need to work with the mayor. He needs to find money and bring appropriations down here to address some of the capital needs in the city, and we all know that there are a lot of them. One of the things that I've heard with the schools this year, is the transportation. I have to put my faith in the mayor that he's going to come up with the money to fully fund the needs of transportation. I think it's important. We all know the makeup of our city, and to not have adequate transportation, would certainly be an issue. And I do think that, I do have confidence that he's going to come through and make sure that that is taken care of. And, that's going to rest on him. If he doesn't do that, then the school committee's going to do what they have to do to reflect that in the budget and make a cut. So I think that overall this is a decent budget, and I'm certainly looking forward to voting for it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Cormier. Any other comments or questions? Counselor Shalfo Zephyr.
Thank you very much. Through the chair to the finance chair, I did ask you, we've had a lot of conversations about the transportation deficit. So it's between $400,000 and $500,000, I guess, that is not in this budget to transport students. And in this case would be high school students, because by law we don't have to, even though everybody is of the opinion that that's a beneficial thing to do because it prevents students from dropping out. And we heard earlier this evening about the hardship that it does place on people. So I know I had talked with you earlier today, and you were going to talk to the mayor, and what was the outcome of that conversation?
I did.
Counselor, you ready to
I am.
respond to that?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll respond to that. I did have a conversation with the mayor today. The mayor is not in favor of curtailing transportation services to the legally required services only. So I don't think anybody on this council or anybody I've spoken to is in favor of curtailing those services. We all know already that we're taking on faith that the mayor would make sure that the Medicaid reimbursement money, when it's available, is appropriated to school transportation, which the mayor has stated publicly that he will do. We understand that that will bridge about, I think it's 900,000 some odd dollars to the transportation deficit, which is 1.5 million.
Yeah.
The mayor indicated to me today that he will find a way to make that work, and if necessary, appropriate the funds through us to make that transportation deficit go away.
It's great news. Counselor Shalfo Zephyr, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So through the chair to the finance chairperson. But if we pass a school budget that does not have enough money to enter into a contract for busing services, which has to be done between now and August, I would imagine, I don't know, but it has to be done sometime soon. I mean, if we pass a budget that is $400,000 or $500,000 less than what the school department actually needs, there isn't really any guarantee. I mean,
Well, I understand your point. We're making the same leap in faith with respect to the Medicaid money, because as we all know, there's no legal requirement that the mayor appropriate that from the general fund to the school transportation needs. But he indicated to me plainly that he would make sure that the school department received the adequate funding to do it. Now, there's a couple of, things in play here. I mean, the final numbers we won't know with respect to, closing out all these accounts until October. But, I mean, we either take him at his word or we don't, I guess, and that's what it boils down to. So I appreciate and I understand how important this need is. And the fact that I had the conversation with him, the fact that he was willing to let me publicly say that, and the fact that he was public, I think, very public about the Medicaid reimbursement, I think places us in a position, it's obviously wholly different than last year. I know the numbers are much different, and although it's a lot of money, it's $500,000 is a lot of money, it's not nearly the problem we had last year. And I'm confident that the money will be appropriated, if in fact it's necessary to appropriate it, or whatever the amount is, in order to get the transportation fund fully funded.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Shalfo Zephyr, you all set?
I am, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the floor? Counselor Dabrowski.
Government, I think the budget in particular is about policies and priorities, and frankly, and I don't know if it's good or bad policy, but my preference would be to fund the school department more. I don't think as a community we can really improve and grow in a positive way if we don't fund the school department to a level where they can compete. But having said that, I was at the graduation ceremony, and I was at the awards night, and just when the school officials came down the other night for the budget hearings, there's a lot of good karma there. and a lot of positive energy that, you know, you probably haven't seen in a little bit. And I'm encouraged by the increase in the percentage over net school spending. It's a solid increase. It's not as much as I would like to see, but it's a solid increase, and I'm hopeful that that trend will continue. So I think, you know, for the first time in, I don't know, 12 years, 10, 12 years, I am going to support this budget because of those reasons.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or questions? Counselor Bonanza?
Yeah, this budget represents a lot of hard work by a lot of people, and, you know, I'm really appreciative of the work that the school department did this year, and it was a pleasure meeting with Mr. Stassen, the chairman of the, or with respect to finances of the school committee. You know, budgets are priorities, and we heard during the budget hearings, as we do every year, that there are a lot of departments with a lot of very valid needs. We heard the fire department come down, and, you know, and Chief Sidlow is thinking very thoughtfully about the future of the department and its capital needs, its buildings, all the rest that goes along with that. He's, you know, a great professional. We're lucky to have him. Police department has needs. The DPW has needs. You know, we hear from the taxpayers too. I mean, you know, taxpayers get a 2.5% increase every year, and for a long time running, and that's a burden to people. So, you know, it's a balancing act. I will say this, and I don't know that a lot of credit belongs to the taxpayers because they've created this, and also our financial team. We're in a position now where it looks like we're going to be able to fund a police station and those athletic fields without a tax increase, or without, you know, structurally within the borrowing capacity that we've created through the bonds that are out there now, which is rather remarkable. And on the track we're on, and I know there's a, look, you can have a policy discussion, and it's good to have policy discussions about the pace at which we're funding our pension liability and our OPEB liability. But everybody knows that if you go to Best Buy and you buy a refrigerator cash versus paying it on a 4-year payment plan, it's going to cost you more on the 4-year payment plan. And we are saving tens of millions, more than tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on the track we're on to fund pensions and OPEB. And we're seeing a tremendous gain there, and the day will come when we have the ability to provide our citizens a lot more services for the same kind of money that they're paying in taxes now. And it's not that far off. So, I mean, that credit belongs to not just the finance team, who's done, I think, has done a wonderful job, but it also belongs to the taxpayers who've helped to pay all this money. So I think we have a lot, you know, to be optimistic about as a city. We heard, you know, the sort of tale of two cities we are when it comes to school financing and the foundation budget and how we're treated. We are sort of the prior of the state almost, because we have a lot of great things going for us that penalize us, and then we have a lot of disadvantaged students, and we're not collecting what we should be collecting. And I think we should seriously look at addressing that in some way, either through a political or legal forum. That's for another day. But I'm happy to support this budget, and you know, it's I think a team effort, and I think the city has a lot to be proud of. As Councilor Cormier said, is it perfect? Of course not. It's not perfect, but it's look, it's a lot better than it was last year. That's for sure. And thanks to everybody who participated in getting us to this point.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or questions? Anyone that hasn't spoken yet? Okay, Counselor Shalfo Zephyr, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, could I ask the comptroller who's sitting here a question?
No,
No, okay.
there's no need for it at this point. We've gathered all the information we need. I don't want to recess and break it at this point. Any other questions or comments? Counselor Feckley.
I want to reflect some of the comments that Councilor David Cormier brought up. Again, this is not a perfect budget. On the city side, are there some things that probably could be cut? I think so, but I don't think it would make that much of a difference, and I'm not an accountant to figure this out within the less than 2 weeks that we had to look this over. I did take into consideration Mr. Zimmerman's comments about the possibility of OPEB scale back, and I'd like to look into that a little more for the next time around. I am heartened that Councilor Bedanza has had a conversation with the mayor regarding adding to the school transportation, and as Councilor Cormier said also, we have to take him at his word on that. The superintendent of schools has requested that we accept this budget, so it would be very difficult to not do so. Last year, I did not vote for the budget. The deficit was quite larger than this. There shouldn't be any deficit, but I think holding up the school and their operating expenses just isn't at hand this year. What I'd also like to do is work with the mayor regarding the fire chief's request for a station in North Leominster during this year. And I think that we all need to get together and figure out some way to give people some tax relief. And as Councilor Bedanza indicated, we do have to give these people in the city of Leominster a lot of credit. That they pay their taxes, that they appreciate that they have a great city with great safety and great schools. But we do need to give them some relief because the taxes are just going up incrementally and it's killing people. So with that, I am going to support the budget because I feel as though we need to go ahead in a positive manner. City side, not much I think we can do. School side, they have requested that we do so. So that's my rationale.
Thank you very much. Any other closing comments or questions? If not, this will be a roll call vote. The recommendation was to grant Communication 76. I'll begin with Council Bonanza this time.
Yay.
Council Ottinger.
Yay.
Council Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Council David Cormier.
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yay. Councilor Frida.
Yay.
Councilor Dobrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Nay.
That's a nay?
Nay.
Okay. Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Okay, thank you. So by a vote of 8-1, the communication has been granted. Thank you. Thank you for all the work. A tremendous amount of work for everyone, including the Finance Committee that weighs into that, and the councils that attended the hearings, the councils that had meetings with people, to get to the bottom of things. It's great. Great points raised, and let's consider moving in that direction and have some of those answers this year. Excuse me?
In order.
Yep. Okay. We're now going to move to the order. Does the chairman have a report?
On C-76, ordered that the sum of $124,444,352 be appropriated to the fiscal year 2019 general fund budget, same to be raised, offset by fiscal year 2019 revenue. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read to move for the adoption of the order on Communication 76. Are there any closing questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed?
Nay.
By a vote of 8-1, Communication 76 has been adopted. Thank you. The order has been adopted. We'll now move on to Communication 77. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, C-77, relative to the appropriation of $5,827,108 to the fiscal year 2019 Water Department budget, same to be raised by the fiscal year 2019 water rates as authorized by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E. Mr. President, I would ask you to poll my committee relative to C-77. I am in favor.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I'm in favor.
Third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I concur.
Mr. Chairman, qualified committee.
Yes, the unanimous recommendation of finance is to grant C-77.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication 77. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? Councilor Cormier.
Thank you. I am in support of C-77, but I am with a little bit of hesitation. I'm not so sure that C-77 actually meets the needs of, the infrastructure, really. I know this is definitely not an easy thing to say, but, you know, I am in favor of, you know, sort of seeking some more information from Roger Brooks about, you know, a reasonable rate increase to address some of the infrastructure issues. I mean, we have miles upon miles upon miles of water lines that need to be replaced. And, you know, to me, the sooner we do some of them, I think the more money we might save in the long run. You know, we have a ton of water main breaks in the winter. It's old pipes that were not put in correctly. You know, they don't have any give to them, you know, when the ground freezes and, you know, they snap. I know that's a problem up in my neighborhood. I think we probably have a 1,500-foot water main that probably has a sleeve or a Band-Aid on it every 10 feet. I mean, you can see all the holes in the road where they've dug to replace it over the years. And so I do think that, you know, we need to maybe look at a reasonable increase to get a little bit more aggressive. You know, we can look at it as raising rates and spending more money. I look at it as investment that will, you know, in the long run, you know, turn over dividends by not having to have a crew go out in the middle of, you know, the winter on a Sunday night to fix a water main that's broken, because we're not addressing the capital needs of the system. So, but I will support C-77 tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the floor? Last time, any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 77 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $5,827,108 be appropriated to the fiscal year 2019 Water Department budget, same to be raised by fiscal year 2019 water rates as authorized by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Move for the adoption of the order, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor, the recommendation read to adopt the order for Communication 77. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Mr. Chairman, Communication 78, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-78, relative to the appropriation of $5,471,083 to the fiscal year.
Excuse me for 1 second. Mr. Hool on the school committee, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I gotta leave.
No, you can leave. That's okay, but I just wanted to recognize you. You've been here all night. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
good job, guys.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Council Bonanza.
All right, where was I? Relative to the appropriation of $5,471,083 to the fiscal year 2019 sewer department budget, same to be raised, offset by fiscal year 2019 sewer rates, as authorized by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E. Mr. President, I am in favor of C-78. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
I yield the floor to the second member, Council Pauline Cormier.
I'm in agreement.
Council David Cormier.
I concur.
Mr. Chairman, please qualify.
Mr. President, the Finance Committee is unanimous to grant C-78.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard the recommendation read to grant Communication 78. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Feckley.
I have a question through the chair. to
Sure.
the, Chair of the Finance Committee. The difference between C-77 and C-78, the wording, same to be raised offset. Can you explain that for the public?
Good question.
I think it's like a belts and suspenders, so the money is raised from, you know, the revenues generated from those fees as provided in the statute, and then offset against the expenses.
Okay,
So it's kind of it's a typo, but.
okay, so it's basically the same thing.
Yeah,
I have
somebody missed the
never
word
heard an
offset.
analogy like that in my life. It was unbelievable.
He
I was
sold
gonna
me.
use, I was gonna use it earlier when we
Yeah.
were talking about something else.
I'm sorry, I
When
need to
we
use
when we were
it.
gonna, when we were amending the, when we were talking about whether the conditions on the amended permit went along
There you
with
go.
it.
It's a great question. Thank you. All set, Councilor Feckley?
I am, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on Communication 78? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 78 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $5,471,083 be appropriated to the fiscal year 2019 sewer department budget, same to be raised offset by fiscal year 2019 sewer rates as authorized by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E, Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council's heard that recommendation read. For the last time, any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, Communication 78 has been granted. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
You're welcome.
You and your committee did an arduous task, working with all the different groups in town and everything, and your communication with the mayor's office and administration. We really appreciate all your efforts. Thank you very much. We now move on to public service. We have two items here, 66-18. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am. 66-18, Barbara Richardson et al., except Garfield Street is an accepted way. I don't believe we got anything back. I'd ask you to pull my committee, but I'm going to recommend that we table this. There's a long way to go to
Okay.
get it back.
I yield the floor to the clerk, Counsel Ottinger.
Yes.
Okay, third member, Counsel Pauline Cormier.
I'm in agreement.
Madam Chair, could you qualify?
Unanimous recommendation to table
Table.
66-18.
Thank you. Council, sir, the recommendation read to table 66-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0, 66-18 has been tabled. Madam Chair, 67-18, are you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, 67-18, Jill A. Natola, accept Lexington Circle together with the water line easement is shown on the street acceptance plan in Leominster, Massachusetts, prepared for the Sheldon Hills Realty Trust by Hannigan Engineering Incorporated, dated March 15th, 2018. The one piece that was missing was the city solicitor's comments, and we did receive them on June 22nd. I'll read it into the record. Ms. Lynn Bouchard, City Clerk, RE petition 67-18, acceptance of Lexington Circle as a public way. Dear Ms. Bouchard, you have requested that we review petition 67-18, in which Liberty Rental Corporation, as trustee of the Shelton Hills Realty Trust, the owner, requests the city to lay out and accept Lexington Circle as a public way. The layout of Lexington Circle is shown, more particularly a plan entitled Street Acceptance Plan in Leominster, Massachusetts, dated March 15, 2018, the plan, a paper copy of which was included with the petition. I've reviewed the plan and other materials accompanying petition 67-18, namely the drafts of a quitclaim deed, a certificate of trustee, and a certificate of title prepared by the owner's attorney, and based on the foregoing materials, find that the owner has title to Lexington Drive. The trustee's certificate and title certification are in final form. The owner's attorney and I will make a few revisions to the quitclaim deed. I recommend that the city engineer confirm that the street acceptance plan accurately depicts the layout of Lexington Circle as constructed on the ground. Attached, please find an order to be adopted by the city council, voting to lay out and accept Lexington Circle as a public and authorizing the mayor to accept the fee in the roadway and other easements. Once the vote has been taken and documents finalized, please request the mayor to sign the enclosed acceptance of deed and send me the original for recording. Please let me know if you have any questions or need additional assistance concerning this matter. Very truly yours, Sharon Everett. And the order of layout is, whereas it appears that the public convenience and necessity require the laying out of a public way of Lexington Circle, is shown on a plan, is shown more particularly on a plan of land entitled Street Acceptance Plan, Leominster, Massachusetts, dated March 15, 2018, prepared by Hannigan Engineering. Now therefore be it ordered that Lexington Circle is hereby laid out as a public way, and the mayor is hereby authorized to acquire the necessary land and/or easements for public way and drainage, utility access, and/or related purpose by purchase, gift, and/or eminent domain, all for nominal consideration, and on such other terms as the mayor deems appropriate. In witness thereof, we, the duly elected and qualified city councilors of the city of Leominster, have hereunto set our hands this date whenever we sign it. So the recommendation would be to accept Lexington Way as a public way.
Thank you. Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant 67-18. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, this will be a roll call vote. Excuse me, Council Cormier, go ahead.
I just want to say that I hope that this is the first of many.
Oh, it
To come
feels
along.
good tonight, doesn't it?
It does.
This is
And-
great.
And I support this 100%.
It's great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, this will be a roll call vote on 67-18, beginning with Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Odenger.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dobrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
I should record as yay by a vote of 9-0. 67-18 has been granted. We will be dealing with this one more time as the order will be coming down, hopefully at the next meeting. Okay, thank you very much for your work, we appreciate that. We now move on to public safety and traffic. Councilor Cormier, 72-18, are you ready to report? And if you want to take these in block, feel free.
Yes, Mr. President, if I may, I'm going to take 72-18, 73-18, 74-18, 75-18, 76-18, 77-18, and 78-18 in block.
Thank you.
And they all read, David R. Cormier, install a street light on pole number 10 on Independence Drive. David R. Cormier, install a street light on pole number 12 on Bicentennial Avenue. David R. Cormier, install a street light on pole number 4 on Flintlock Drive. David R. Cormier, install a street light on pole number 5 on Bicentennial Avenue. David R. Cormier, install a street light on pole number 2 on Drummer Lane. David R. Cormier, install a street light on pole number 4 on Indian Ridge Drive. And David R. Cormier, request to install a street light on pole number 2 on Bicentennial Avenue. We made a few recommendations. The first one is the City of Leominster's Police Department on 6/25 of 2018. Intern Chief Michael Goldman said that in reference to communication 72 through 78-18 referred to me by the Public Safety Committee on June 11, 2018. I, on behalf of the Leominster Police Department, know of no good cause to oppose the streetlights, so he is in favor. We also have another recommendation from Joe Poirier, which also answers one of the questions that the planning board asked, which I'll talk about in a minute. I have received a request on June 12th of 2018 for installation of streetlights on the following petitions. And the installation of lights will cost approximately $600 per street light, with the total cost for the above petitions of approximately $4,200. The question is funding. We will need to do an appropriation for money for this request. And then we also had asked the planning board for an opinion. And I do have to admit and apologize that I wanted to go to their meeting, and I totally forgot all about it that night. I think I had a conflict anyway with something else going on, so I couldn't have went. And I probably could have cleaned up a lot of the questions that they had right then and there. But in any event, they did respond, and they said, Dear Ms. Bouchard, at a regularly scheduled planning board meeting on June 18th, 2018, the planning board voted unanimously to request additional information from the City Council and DPW in regard to the above referenced petitions. Please consider the following questions. What type of streetlight is being proposed? And I can answer that question. It's going to be a regular standard LED streetlight, just like all the ones that are in the city now that were just swapped out. And number two, what is the cost of the streetlights? I think Joe Poirier did a good job at explaining that. Number three, who will maintain the streetlights? That'd be the City of Leominster. I just want to add that I was working with the city clerk maybe a year or two ago. Somebody had asked me about Bicentennial and that whole development when all this stuff about unaccepted streets was being talked about. And all these streets in the subdivision were actually taken by eminent domain in December of 1999. So they are all public streets. I'm sure Councilor Frida was very involved with it.
Took us 3 years to do that.
Back then, right? And so they are city-owned streets, and we will, we would be maintaining those streetlights. Number 4, how or why were these poles selected for a streetlight? That's another very good question. First of all, the subdivision, if you put a light on every other pole, you're talking about maybe 21, 22, or 23 lights in the entire subdivision, total. And that's, in general of where you'd put a street light on every other pole. So what I decided to do was to start out by putting a street light like at all the intersections and at the end of the cul-de-sacs. Flintlock is a cul-de-sac, Independence is a cul-de-sac, Drummer Lane is a cul-de-sac, and then I believe all the others are at intersections within that development. So I figured that'd be a good place to start. And then the neighbors will start sort of talking, and we can get more input about who wants one and maybe even who doesn't want one. Some people might not want one, they shine in their windows or whatnot. So that's how I arrived at these locations. And the other question was, can a map or site plan be provided that indicates the location of each light pole? I'm assuming that they must have some kind of a subdivision plan that they can dust off, and I will be glad to show them on there. I think, I certainly can respect all the questions that came, from the planning board. I think what I was looking for from them was, an explanation as to if there was anything, in the site plan when this came for approval, regarding street lighting. Certainly I'm sure it didn't indicate that there was to be none. I don't know if it ever indicated that there was to be some, or if the neighbors were supposed to, pay for it, which I don't think was the case on these streets. I know that we have some streets that was the case. So, that's kind of what I'd like to see from the planning board, if we can kind of relay that to them. If there was any mention of this when the subdivision was approved. But at this point, and I also wanted a recommendation from the mayor, and I have not gotten that yet, and clearly he's gonna have to make a financial appropriation to make this happen, which I'm gonna work with him on. And I still need to, I did send him an email and I have not heard back. I'm sure he's been busy because it's budget time. So at this point, I'll check with my committee, and I will do my best to get to the next planning board meeting as well. But at this point, I'd like to ask for further time to try to get a response from the mayor and see if he'll be willing to fund this. I think on the committee is Councilor Feckley.
I yield the floor to Councilor Feckley. Clerk?
I agree with further time.
Third member, Councilor Dobrowski.
That's fine.
Mr. Chairman, qualify, please.
Okay, so the recommendation for all of these petitions, 72-18 through 78-18, is further time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read to take 7218 through 7818 in block and give them further time this evening. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Councilor Frida?
Yeah, just through the chair to the Ward 3 councilor, maybe you should check with the DPW and Joe Poirier, get their opinion as to where those lights should go. I mean, it's $600 a piece.
Right.
Maybe doubling up isn't gonna do any good. It can eliminate one or two.
Right.
And get their recommendation.
Okay. Yeah,
That's a good point.
if we could, Madam Clerk, then we can further ask Joe Poirier if he agrees with these locations to start.
Just-
I do serve on a committee with our, a social club with him, and I did have a quick word with him, and he thought it was a good idea, where, I did mention to him where they were going, but if you can get something official in writing from him, I think he's aware of all these locations.
Yeah, just for the record, to build on that, it's a great point. When National Grid owned them, we may put in a request, but when they actually install one, they might be on a different pole. It was more or less their discretion, but we have control on that now, so working together for the best, especially public safety lighting piece would be excellent.
Right.
So thank you.
I do have to say that, I don't know why this never happened, but I know that a lot of the people up there are very, very supportive of having some lighting up there. And certainly I think we're gonna do it cheaper now than
Absolutely.
we would have years ago, so, I'm sure it wouldn't have been cheap to have National Grid go up there, and it probably would've been $400 a light and, the whole bit, so it's ours now. We make the investment in the lights and won't be paying very much at all to operate them, so I guess it didn't hurt by waiting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions on the recommendation? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation to give 72 through 7818 in block further time, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. We'll now move on to city property, Communication 53. Counselor Oettinger, you ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, I am. C-53, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requested the property known on the, to the assessors as map 302, block 1A, and located on Jungle Road be declared surplus. We had been waiting for the, to see if we got any action on the RFP for this particular property. That was, the deadline for that was the 18th of this month. We did not receive any requests, RFPs for it, but I understand that there may be some other interest. Initially, I was going to ask that the petition be denied, but after I've heard this, I'd like to speak a little bit more to the purchasing agent and find out what, if any, interest is really there. So I'd like to recommend further time.
Okay. Can we poll your committee? You all set?
Yes, poll the committee if you'd please.
All right, I yield the floor to the clerk, Counselor Bonanza.
I'm in favor of further time.
Third member, Counselor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
The recommendation is for further time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read for further time on C-53. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0. Further time has been awarded. Old business. We're kind of at mid-season right now, going into the new fiscal year. So if I just wanted the clerks of the committees, I know we've been pretty busy the past 6 months. So just want to give you, to requalify, if you have any minutes from any meetings that you had, if you can just kind of clean them up and get them to our assistant clerk. And what will happen is we'll get those into the records, all right? So as we move into July, we'll start with kind of a clean slate. Also, if you can check your folders and see if there's anything that's been tabled for a while. I think that we're getting better with that, but in the meantime, there might be some pieces that if the agenda slows down a little bit, we could be working some of the tabled petitions to get them out of the way one way or the other as well, okay? So if you can just check on those independently, I'd appreciate it. Any other items on the old business? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I would request through the president to reconvene the President's Committee on City Ordinance Review. There were a number of items that we had discussed briefly, and then there were a couple of things that we wanted to follow up on. There was a traffic fine ordinance, there was a commercial vehicles on residential property ordinance, construction projects we had talked about briefly, and at one point had talked to the police chief about the lack of police detail for some of those things, and the signage is inconsistent. So that was another thing. And we also talked about perhaps including language in contracts for contractors when they're out in the streets doing this kind of work. And yard sales, Councilor Feckley, who was the other member, along with Councilor Bedanza. And then there's a curfew ordinance I want to take a look at.
Okay, well, if you can share what you just shared with us,
Certainly.
and what I'll do is we'll take a look at it, and I'll get back to you on that. Okay? All right, thank you very much. Any other items under old business? Okay, we'll now move on to new business. We have a first reading of an ordinance. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President, thank you. First reading of an ordinance relative to amending Chapter 22 of the revised ordinances entitled Zoning by amending the Leominster zoning map so that the following parcels are situated in the Residence B zoning district. Pleasant Street West Side, map 481, lots 19 and 20. Map 521, lots 1 and 39. Map 488, lots 1, 5, 6, 7, 8. Map 494, lots 18, 3A, 31A, 32A, 32B, and 32C. Pleasant Street East Side, map 561, lots 35A, 36A, 37A. Map 340, lots 1 and 2. Map 410, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 22, and 23. map 496, lots 1, 2, and 3, Low Street, map 488, lot 5. This is formally this is formally petition 1418. Before I get into my recommendation, do we need a hearing on the second? We don't need a hearing. Okay, good. My recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
I yield the floor to Council Frida, the clerk.
I agree.
Council Bonanza, third member.
John, I was really missing you reading this. I mean, I was going through withdrawal.
Hey, one more time
I wanna
after
do the
this.
stop signs again.
Have you memorized it yet?
I want to do the stop
Almost.
signs again.
Yeah.
I am in favor,
Okay.
because I don't want to hear it again.
Mr. Chairman, please qualify your recommendation.
Unanimous recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance.
Councilors heard the recommendation to adopt the first reading of the ordinance. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, this will be a roll call vote, beginning with Council David Cormier.
Yay.
Council Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Council Frank Ottinger.
Yay.
Council Bonanza.
Yay.
Council Feckley.
Yay.
Council Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dobrowski.
Yay.
Council Frida.
Yay.
I shall record as yea by a vote of 9-0. The first reading has been adopted. We'll now move on to another first reading. Legal Affairs, formally petition 52-18. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. First reading of an ordinance relative to amending Chapter 13, Section 13-29 of the revised ordinances entitled Handicap Parking Spaces, creating one reserved space in front of the Gallagher Building, 24 Church Street, located on Merriam Avenue closest to Church Street. The recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance and to schedule a hearing on the second reading for July 9th, 2018, and I would ask you to poll my committee.
I yield the floor to the second member.
I agree.
Third member.
I agree.
Thank you. Requalify.
The unanimous recommendation is to adopt the first reading of the ordinance and establish a hearing for the second reading on July 9th, 2018 at 7:10 PM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council heard the recommendation read to adopt the first reading of the ordinance and to establish a hearing on July 9th at 7:10 PM in the council chambers. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, this will be a roll call vote. Begin with Council Frida.
Yay.
Council Dobrowski.
Yay.
Council Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Council Feckley.
Yay.
Council Bonanza.
Yay.
Council Ottinger.
Yay.
Council Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Council David Cormier.
Yay.
I shall record as yea by a vote of 9-0. The first reading of the ordinance has been established with the hearing scheduled for 7:10 PM in the council chambers on July 9th. Community calendar, any events taking place that you want to bring to the community here? Councilor Cormier?
I just want to give a shout out to the ball hockey players. They're in the World Junior Championships. They're currently playing in Nitra, Slovakia. Over 100 kids from the Leominster area alone. They joined together with kids from all over the country. So we have over 100 people from Leominster who went out, parents, coaches, the majority of the coaches. This was 18 months in the making. These kids started fundraising. And as of the beginning of this meeting, the U14 and the U20 teams both won in their games against Europe today. Unfortunately, U16 and U18 fell today, but they played Canada, who is always one of the #1 teams everywhere, and they're by far the steepest competition for the United States. So a shout out to all those kids and parents and coaches and sponsors, especially the people of Leominster who sponsored these kids. Fantastic trip for them, long plane ride. We got a ton of pictures on Facebook of those kids hanging in airports and sitting on the planes for hours upon hours, but they're doing great. They're out playing, and best of luck for the rest of the tournament for them.
Fantastic. And by the way, you're the Ward 2 city councilor?
I am.
Yeah, I'm in Ward 5. Councilor Feckley, you're like Miss Little League. Isn't the apex of the city championship like the 12-year-old team in the majors? Wondering, North Leominster, American Little League, which league won the city championship this year? Do we know?
We can all guess.
Well, we can ask Councilor Pauline Cormier if she can answer that one.
Yeah. Let's
Mr.
rub that
Laura
in.
won't answer that when I ask him. So congratulations to the kids, and all the kids that are playing throughout the city. It's awesome. Any other items on the community calendar? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Thank you very much. I just want to let everybody in the public know that the Mass Nurses Association is holding a food drive to benefit Ginny's Helping Hand and the Spanish American Center. It's called Stuff a Truck food drive this Saturday, June 30th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Demola Supermarket down at the mall at Whitney Field. And the nurses are doing this because kids in the summertime are a lot more food insecure. They don't have school breakfast, they don't have school lunch to depend on. So the nurses are doing this food drive that will support both Ginny's and then also the Spanish American Center, which does a lot of outreach to the various programs throughout the city. So I hope that people will swing by Demola's and hopefully contribute to that this weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have a meeting on the 29th. If you haven't been invited, you are invited, and that's to go to Health Alliance Hospital, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. There'll be some transparent disclosure regarding some of the things that are happening up there right now, and that's at 7 a.m. in the morning in the administrative building in the basement, okay, conference room. So I'm reaching out to you if you're interested in attending that. If you haven't RSVP'd to them, just give them a quick call. If you need a number, I'll get it to you, okay? Any other items of the community calendar?
I just have a quick question on
Sure.
that. Did you set that up, or did they?
I did, and then they confirmed it. No, they set the meeting up.
Yeah,
This is the president's meeting. Yeah,
Oh.
okay?
well, no, not really. Most of us work at that hour of the
Well,
morning.
I know. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
that's when they have it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go to the meeting. I also, several of you, or if not all of you, have probably had a conversation with administration up there regarding some of the changes that are happening. They're reaching out, and my suggestion was come down to the council chambers. When Mr. Duncan was the VP, he would come down here on a regular basis and kind of give us updates on things happening. And that was an agreement we had with them going back to the overlay district that was awarded to them as a result of almost 18 months of a long process. And my suggestion would be to come back down here so they can also share it with the community. So I think right now, I don't know where they're at right now. I have not spoke to the CEO there directly, but they were looking for feedback, and I think that's what the meeting is all about on the 29th, where they're at that point, okay? All right, any other items on the community calendar? Okay, so we have one item to deal with here tonight. And first of all, let's all say happy birthday to our city clerk,
Oh, go
Lynn.
ahead.
You know,
You.
birthday to you.
Happy
Birthday, dear Lynn. Happy birthday to you. Boy, would Wayne Nickel love to suck his voice into that, baby. I know about Bob Savatelli, though.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not a eulogy, it's a birth when you retire, you know. But I think, you know, we'd be remiss without spending a few minutes just kind of reflecting on things. And I just, you know, I want to start it off, and then we'll go around if anybody wants to add into it. But Lynn has been a guardian angel for that office for a long time. It's not always easy working in there, as we know. And sometimes the policies and practices are something that you just kind of get involved with it. It just passed down from one generation of clerks to the next, and you just take them on, and this is how we do things. And, you know, she was really overtaxed this year, and for the past few years, when it came down to elections and dealing with all the candidates. And one of the things that I hear continuously is her unbiased relationship with each of us. You know, her level of confidentiality, where you can go in there and sit down with her and talk to her about things and get some advice. And, you know, whether you've had a chance to be in the council president seat or the vice president seat or wherever you've been, you know, that's the thing that really reflects the professional that she's been for such a long time, but also a part of our extended family. You know, and there's been, you know, we're human beings, and we all live in this very complex world, and it's not easy sometimes. We go through things with our own personal lives and our families, but we have to continue to, you know, put on the city council thing every second and fourth Monday night and everything in between. And sometimes we really get overtaxed and overburdened with things happening, and Lynn's always really had a real level head when it came down to being able to help guide and steer us in the right direction. And I say this with all the love in the heart as a friend, and we're gonna miss her, and I think that we're in pretty good shape. You know, we were kind of knocked off our seats a few months ago, but we're in pretty good shape right now with the things that are happening, you know, in that office and where we're gonna be going. But to Lynn and Danny, you know, and the family, the kids, they've been such a big part of this community for their entire life. And we just thank you so much. So I'm gonna give you a citation on behalf of the council. It's really not a big deal. Your husband's gonna use it as a dartboard, you know? That's just for the years of service, you know? And just go around, and why don't we start with Claire? Go ahead. If you wanna pass and you wanna come back to it, it's fine. Very informal.
It's kind of hard to add anything to you, Mr. President, but I was fortunate enough to be in a position to hire Lynn back in the day. And obviously, it was a pretty good choice. And you're right, she does things unbiased, does what she can for everybody involved, always answers the phone. That's one thing I have to say, because sometimes I'm last minute checking something and she answers that phone. And that really makes a difference sometime when you look, especially today. But what can we say? I mean, she's, no, there really isn't. I mean, you cover all of it, and it's very difficult to come up with words that are adequate to say how you've been. So, thank you, and thank you.
John?
No, I'm gonna miss you a lot. Not only here, but in the office and on the phone. Always professional, Lynn, and always pleasant. But hit 'em straight.
She golfs. That's
And I
not
hope,
directed to her husband.
And enjoy it, and, you know, stop by. Stop by from time to time.
That's usually when I'm calling her last minute. When he calls me last minute and says, hey, I'm not going to the meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Sue?
Yep, thank you. Congratulations, well-deserved. You've worked really hard for a long time. Now you get to spend time with your little grandchildren. I don't know if Danny's going to part with them, though. I mean, you might have to wrestle him for some quality time with the kids, but I have really depended on you very much, as other folks have said. You know, picking up the phone, being responsive, just being able to count on you is something that I've always really felt. I could just call up and I knew you'd get the answer, you'd have the answer, and you were always there picking up the phone. So that, I will absolutely miss you. And we go way back. Lynn and I go way back. So I will absolutely miss seeing you around the office, but I'll see you around town. Absolutely.
Gail?
So we have a common theme here. We're all going to miss her terribly, and it is, you know, very important that she always answers the phone. And sometimes she'd answer the phone, and I'd give her something really wacky, you know, and she'd say no, or, you know, or yeah. And, you know, I always took her advice, because her advice is very worthy. So we're going to miss you, Lynn. I'm very happy that I've been to the office a couple of times, and I've seen how well you've been working with Caitlin and T.D. You know, I had the opportunity to be on their search committees, and I hope that I know that we've made good choices. And so we'll create a relationship with the two of them now, too. But we are going to miss you, Lynn. I couldn't have done this without you. Literally, I couldn't with all the questions that I had when I first started. So good luck. Enjoy your well-deserved retirement.
Mark?
Well, as all the prior councilors have indicated, your support, Lynn, of us as a council has been superlative. I could not have asked for anything more. Every inquiry, every question was always professionally responded to. But one of the things I'm going to miss the most is the levity, because you always had a smile on your face, and you always brought some humor to it, and God knows you need some humor in this business. And that was a very welcome element to this whole process. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for every one of those exchanges, because you always pick up my day when I've been in there.
Frank?
I know it's going to be somewhat repetitious, and as a new member of the council, I haven't dealt with her from the council perspective too much, but she's always been a great help. But in some of my previous activities, whenever I had a question about city government, I don't care how dumb it was or how off the wall it was, Lynn was very, very great at answering the question and doing it very professionally. So I appreciated that. Okay.
Thank you. Pauline?
I, along with Frank, got to the party a little bit late as a result of a special election. And right after the election, the very next day, Lynn said, "Come on down, we'll swear you in." And unbeknownst to me, my entire family, an extended family, wanted to come. And I called Lynn in a panic, and I said, you know, I've got all, and she said, "Don't worry about it, come down, we'll do it downstairs in the chambers." And my whole family was here, and I have all the pictures, and you made it really, really special for me. And I look at those pictures often, and thank you so much for making that so special for me. And I just hope you love your retirement and enjoy it.
Dave?
Yeah, well, unlike Councilor Frida, when you were first hired into the city clerk's office, I was not here. I was probably still in, I don't know, yeah, maybe grammar
That's
school or
enough.
something, but,
Rub it in.
but you were certainly here during, you know, all of my time and being president, which is, you know, the president has to bounce a lot off of the city clerk. And there's a lot of good memories of being in your office, a lot of laughs. If I could add up all the minutes that I was in the office, you know, over the years, they probably would add up to months worth of time. You know, and as you leave, you take a lot of institutional knowledge. You know, that's one of the things that I notice about the city clerk's office is, you know, when you've been there for a while, you know how to put your finger on something, and it could be a question that braised about something that comes up once every 5 years. But if you're not there, you know, if you haven't been there through it all, you kind of take some work to get the answer to a question. But I'm certainly going to miss you. I'm going to miss all that knowledge. Whenever I've needed help, you've always been there, and I'm going to miss that. And I just want to remind you that you can speak to the person sitting next to you. I'm sure there's a lot of volunteer opportunities. You can count censuses, or you can volunteer to do election stuff. So hopefully you'll be around and you'll volunteer, and we'll still see you. So good luck. It's well deserved.
Sure. Lynn?
I just want to say thank you to everybody. I loved being city clerk. My favorite part of being city clerk was working for the council. I must admit, it was the funnest part. You're going to be in great hands with these two. And I told them I'm just a phone call away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we should have, in the minutes tonight, a standing ovation. Nice job, well done. The community owes you a debt of gratitude. Thank you, thank you. Okay, the meeting is over, thank you.
The Leominster City Council meeting is brought to you by the generous support of the Service Oil Company, 345R Lancaster Street, Leominster, 978-466-1922.